Okay, so without further ado, I'll hand it over to Yannick to talk us through his journey with AI. And if you'd like to introduce your talk, and off you go.
Sure. Hi, everyone. The audio is good, I hope. Let me know in the chat if it's not. Thanks. Yeah, Philip, it was a nice chat we had and a nice time we had in the Netherlands. I was also very interested in your talk, and it's a very interesting time to deal with AI. There's obviously a lot of buzz going on, and I don't see things as rosy as many people do. But at the same time, I think it's an interesting topic, and that's why 6 months ago now, I put together a Joomla extension to be able to use these new tools inside of Joomla. So the talk is going to be just about that. I'll have a few slides to maybe present a little bit of the context and the things that maybe not so many people pay attention to in terms of the pros and cons of all these technologies. And then we'll go through a few practical examples of what can be done with the extensions that I've done. And I'm afraid that's not going to be lasting 2 hours, so you'll have to find more topics later on for your viewing or your talking pleasure. So let me try and share my screen. That's always the difficult part. I think that's this one. Do you see anything or not?
I'm seeing a black screen at the moment, but it was trying to share. And it's
Okay.
simply presenting.
Yeah, it's always like that. Let me try again. Hang on for us. That's better. Yeah, but that's because I went back to the camera. So I need to do.
Now that's looking fine. It's got an inset of you, and we can see your slide as well.
That's correct, but the quality is not going to be okay when I'm going to switch to the browser and showing some fine things, some fine letters. Let me try again. If it doesn't work, I'll stick with the camera. But let's see that. And now I'm going to share this screen. Yeah, that doesn't look very good. That's still a black screen, right? Yeah, okay.
We're back on the black screen, yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, too bad. Okay, I'm gonna just use the camera then, but
we can see you and the
yeah. The content of the screen is fine. It's just the quality, and when I'm switching to the browser, it's usually not as nice. But we'll try. We'll see. Okay. Anyway, so let's get started. This is about practical AI with 4AI, and this is the Joomla user group London. So I hope I'm on the right track. Very quickly, my name is Yannick Gaultier. I run Wibbler.com, which is a small company, basically me and myself and my wife helping. And we've been developing Joomla extensions since 2005, mostly focused on Joomla SEO and generating and creating content, mostly for SEO as well. So you got a few extensions that we are doing for SEO. For Ceph are probably the most famous one. There's also for podcast, which lets you run a fully featured podcast inside of your Joomla website, for video to embed videos, and for logs, which is a small utility. And now for the last 6 months, 4AI has joined the bunch. It's an AI powered assistant, and the goal here is to help you throughout your Joomla work, both backend and frontend. So that's what we're going to see. But first, I will want to say a few words about AI, because it's somewhat a fuzzy definition for some, and we put a lot of things behind that word. And then we'll go through how search engines are adjusting to using AI, and how we maybe will have to adjust to what they are doing. And then we'll see how we can use the current state of AI inside of Joomla. So what is it that we call AI these days? Again, it's a very fuzzy thing, and it's a fuzzy thing, and it's something different from different people. It all started to come together in 2017 when Google published a paper about titled "Attention is All You Need," and which brought about an algorithm, if I can call it that way, called transformers. It's a methodology to basically in their for their purpose, their motivation was to translate text from one language to another. Obviously, this is a problem that Google has a lot. They want to respond to people questions in many languages. So that's why they worked on that. And a transformer is something that can, well, transform one form of text or one form of content into another one. Without going into the details, which I don't really understand anyway, the entire thing is that it all started really in 2017. It was really a breakthrough that allowed what was to come in the following years. In 2018, they started Google started using an alternative to transformers, or an improvement to transformers called BERT, which was able to predict the next sentence in a series, and they used that for classifying things. And in 2018 as well, this was the first generation of GPT, generative pre-training, which is an evolution of BERT in the way that it's predicting the next word in a sentence. And that allows really text generation and translation. And from, let's say, between 2018, 2019, up until 2022, most of these tools were only internal to Google, to all the big names, because they took a lot of resources they required a lot of resources to run. So it was Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and all these guys that were using them to do speech recognition on your phones, to do translation through multiple language, and recognizing images, classifying images into various categories. So, but in 2022, we started seeing tools for the general public, for developers first, Tab9, and then later in the year, GitHub Copilot, which helps us build code, do programming. They don't do programs by themselves, but they help in programming. I'm sure many of you actually use some of this. And then later in the year, there were DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, and Midjourney for the most well-known, which hit the public with the ability to design images based on a prompt, based on a text definition. You speak to them and they draw an image. And then in November, then it was ChatGPT, and that's really where it all started for the public, because it was both public, available to the general audience. It was free, and it was general purpose, not meant to to work on a specific topic. And at the time, it was spectacular because it felt like it was intelligent, or it still feels like it's intelligent, because you can talk to it in natural language and in your language on top of that. So how do they work? Very rapidly, all of these tools, and surprisingly, image generators also work in the same way. They predict the next word in a series. So you ask a question, and because they have been trained and let's say acquired probabilities of one word being after another words, or a series of words, if you ask them a question, they're going to spit back at you the most likely word that comes after your question, based on the statistics they have drawn on basically a very large subset of the internet data. It's a large subset, but it's not large with respect to the internet. It's still a small fraction of the internet. The other steps were that in July 6th, the fourth version of GPT was made available generally to the public. GPT-4, it's really also a very big improvement on the first version that was released on November 30 last year. And the other big particularity, the other big feature of these tools, the OpenAI tools, the ChatGPT ones, is that they have an API that we can use to build other things. And this is exactly what 4AI is doing. So soon enough, the world and Twitter and Facebook was filled with things like what I've written here, that programmers are going to be soon out of a job. Website integrators are going to be soon out of a job because we can already see AI-based system generating websites. Translators are out of a job, writers are not needed, SEO is dead, and Google is dead. Of course, some of it is probably true, some of it is probably not that. I'll let you pick what you think here. We have to keep in mind that the current systems are really full of bugs. They say things that are false, and you can't really distinguish between what's true and what's false. They are usually quite slow when you use them through an API, like we do. Like their systems are fast, but if you use their resources, it's usually pretty slow. And of course, they use up a lot of resources, like lots of servers, much more, and electricity and air conditioning and all that, much more than anything else that happened before. They just need a lot of power. My conclusion here is that they are not, and something I want to get across, and then we'll get back to that later, is that they are not reliable to get knowledge, to ask a question to. It doesn't work anymore, but up until July, like last July, I was speaking at a French session. You could ask ChatGPT for this question: how to distinguish a chicken egg from a cow egg, and it will actually spit out like 3 or 4 paragraphs to explain the difference between a chicken egg and a cow egg. So it shows you that you can't really rely on them to provide search for information. These are not Google, and we'll see that later. I just checked like an hour ago, and actually they've fixed that now. So that particular question, I have to find another example now. But they can do some things very well, and obviously they are improving, if not by the day, at least by the week or by the month. So now we're making Joomla websites, and so one important thing for us and for all our clients is what happens with search engines. And of course, search engines, especially Google, they've been using AI for a long time, several years. Google is really at the start of all of this, but they were not surfacing that to the public. You could not really chat with Google at the time. So the change they are operating right now is that that's mostly Google and Bing, because they are the ones with the resources to use the system, is that they are still search engines. So they are using a hybrid approach where they're not relying on the LLM. I don't think I defined LLM yet. It's LLM is the category of tools that covers ChatGPT. It means large language model, and it's a system that can process language, just like ChatGPT is doing. So search engines are now using LLMs such as ChatGPT just to essentially to speak with you, to answer, to understand your question, to let you explain your question in a more natural way, and then to reply to you. But below the surface, there are still search engines, and they are still searching for things through the usual stuff. Now the problem is that so the consequence is that you still need to be found by Google, by Bing, and by Yandex probably, and the others. And you still need to be at the top of the search results in Google or Bing, so that people can see you, what you have to offer. But the big problem with that is, well, you get some visitors back because today you got links, you got a lot of ads, but you go to a search Google search results page, you got links to your website. If you're good, then people are coming to your site. But to do it today already, not in the EU, I don't think so. I think it's only for in the US, but this is kind of thing that you can see on some requests. Sorry, if you're searching on Google. Let me try and point here. So you're able now to ask a question, or if you ask a question in natural language, and they have a good result, some reliable information about the question you asked, Google is responding with a full text explanation. So they gave you, it's basically similar to what you would get from ChatGPT. And this has already evolved. They have follow-up button here. That means you can click through to get more details or search again some other related topics about the results they gave you. That has changed. I've been told that now they put up links directly below here. So links to the websites they have been using to build up the reply. Still, many people, it's believed that many people are probably not going to go below that and find the additional, more traditional search result listings that you can see at the bottom. So there's a valid question about what sort of traffic you're going to get if your website content is suitable for generating an answer in natural language like that. People will have the full answer and the full reply. There's no need for them to go to your website. That's an ongoing issue. It's a little bit like rich snippets, but much more general. It's open at this time, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen. The only thing we know is that we know two things, and I'm going to mention that right now. You still need to be doing good SEO work to be found by Google and by Bing, so that you are a candidate to be here. We don't know if the result is going to be people coming back to your site, but at least if you want to put out your message, then you need to do the proper work, the proper SEO work, and the SEO work is nearly the same as it was before. And the second thing is that there's at least not for Google, but for OpenAI, for ChatGPT, you now have the ability to block ChatGPT or OpenAI crawler from reading the content of your site. This is it's really recent, and you can put some lines in your robots.txt to block their crawler from reading your website content, assuming you don't want to be in these generative answers, or you won't want to be part of Google or sorry, OpenAI next generation ChatGPT, GPT-5. If you don't want your website content be used for training GPT-5, you can now block it. And that's a valid question. You have to ask yourself: do you want to have your website content in GPT-5 or not? A valid question that maybe we can discuss later. Okay, so now how about for AI itself? Well, when I looked at that, I did some testing at the start, I realized that there are various areas where we can use large language models and their AI APIs. Many people are looking at it to be the ideal tool to create content, to create articles. It's hit and miss. Many times the content that's created is really poor because it has no life in it, if you will, but for other reasons, like it can easily include false false information. I have found that these systems are excellent at translating content into other languages, to the point where all my extensions are now provided in 22 languages, and it's entirely automatic. I know that Marcin is here. He participated in the translation in the past, but it's just so good that it's really hard to do otherwise. Something that we could consider also for Joomla, actually, something else. So they are really good also at text processing, at processing text rather that already exists. So if you have a piece of text and you want a summarization, if you want to make it shorter, you want to extract a description or a title, they are very good at that. Now, if you go the other way around and you ask them to expand a small piece of text or restyle it into another style, then it's 50-50. It can be good, it can be bad. And there's the last task at which they excel, and that's search with vector database, something similar to what Google is doing essentially. The problem with that, so it's something that you could, in theory, install on your website or your Joomla website and have a brilliant search feature where your visitors could talk and really, not chat, at least with the system to get a proper replies. Unfortunately, that requires something that's called a vector database that's not available easily and costs money. So there is no solution at the moment to do that with the Joomla website. Very quickly, the landscape. The providers of AI API tools that we can use to build things using AI are what you see here. The most famous are OpenAI, Azure for Microsoft, which uses OpenAI, Cohere, OneAI, Claude, Hugging Face. Hugging Face is interesting. They have open source models, and they offer you to run these. Even up to today, my experience is that the OpenAI tools are really the ones that work and are actually really cheap. So that counts. Azure uses the same, the tools provided by OpenAI at a larger scale. So they're not an option because they only worked with very, very large customers at the time. And the other ones are expensive or closed or not finished, and their results are not that good. Finally, what I think in the future, and that's is up in front of us, and maybe again that's something we can discuss later. I think the future for these models is to be trained on your own data or use your own data, like build a knowledge base, preserve the know of your company, do some training. That's things they can work very well. They're also maybe very beneficial if used internally. For either internally, but I believe very much for internal applications, and maybe user-facing for customers. But it's a bit more difficult, as we've seen with the vector database needed for search. And there's also the open source movement. Because there are a number of open source models, AI models that you can, and training data sets that you can use and run on your computer, your own computer or your own server. I'll list a couple of them here. They are better because they are faster and smaller. I'll have to say, unfortunately, this time they are really not up to where the big guys like OpenAI and Google are. And so there are some applications of them, but I don't believe they are there yet. And they are not something like we can use right away. Now, unless there are some questions. Yeah, question for later. Okay. So let's have a look at 4AI, which is an AI-powered assistant for Joomla. Prior to that, there were a couple of plugins available already that were basically just asking, letting you type in a question, pass that question up to ChatGPT, and display back the response. Maybe put that content back into your Joomla editor. But in my experience, prompting, asking a question is hard. It can be really tedious, and it's limited into what you can do. So I identified a few things that could be done through what I call guided prompting. That is, instead of having to type in an actual question for most things, I wanted to better integrate the AI process into Joomla, into the admin, or the admin, the front end, sorry, the admin, the front end. And so I have identified 5 classes of things that you can do, and I believe work well with AI. Transforming content, creating content with restrictions, um, SEO, social, and just chatting. Let me get back to transforming. Transforming content is when you take any piece of content on a website and you either spell it for grammar or language, where you summarize it, you translate it, maybe you change its style, or you rewrite it for keywords, which is something that we do sometimes for SEO purposes. I'm not so much in favor, but it's quite possible. And then there's the more traditional way of creating content, creating text, but also just creating a title or description for either a blog or an article, which is something that you kind of have in mind, but also for an email, like you writing a newsletter, for instance. I wanted that to be very comfortable, very easy to use, especially when creating articles and also creating translations, because if you've worked with that, you know that managing translation associations in Joomla is not that easy. So I wanted that to be a bit more easier. The third and fourth categories are SEO, where we can obviously very easily write title, and the system can offer you several options for title, descriptions, can extract keywords. We'll see why it's useful later. Find related keywords, which is also very interesting for marketing people like Philip, although you're not really a marketing people, I believe, a marketing person, I believe. Finding hashtags and things like that. Social is also an obvious area of interest because it can help you create tweets or tweet threads very easily, something we don't always like, and it's very a bit tedious as well. And that, lastly, we have added a chat feature because there's one. I mean, you can always go to ChatGPT if you want to chat, just chat with an AI tool. But by using the interface within for AI, there's a benefit, which is that whatever information you enter is not going to be used to train OpenAI models, future models, ChatGPT 5, 6, and 7, and so on. You can disable that in ChatGPT as well. But if you do that, then you lose the history. They have very cleverly linked both, keeping the history of your chats with training their models on their future models on your input. So you, with using the ChatGPT, the chat feature for AI, you don't have a problem with your content being used for training future AI models, your content and your customers' content. One quick word and last word on the limitations of these systems. I'm talking here about specifically about the OpenAI API. GPT-4, which is available now and which is really the best model they have, is rather slow. But GPT-3.5, which was the model they started with in November last year, is quite okay now. It's decent. It's not, I wouldn't say it's really fast, but it's quite decent and quite usable. The second thing is that ChatGPT has there's a window of text it can work on. Like if you wanted to summarize or translate a piece of text, there's a limit to the amount of text you can send to it, and that's true for all models. GPT-4 has a limit either of 8,000 words, let's say. But it's really slow, and it costs more dollars. The 32,000 words version is not available yet, actually. Sorry, but GPT-3.5 Turbo, the previous models that I'm using most of the time, can either be 4K, 4,000 or 16,000, and it's a good compromise. Again, the main limitation of this system, they can't be relied upon for information. You can't trust them. You have to verify what they are doing. Okay, so I'm going to now switch to the browser and let it let me, I need this here. Okay. So this is for AI. It's an extension. It's a component that you can actually read what's written. I don't know. Here, for instance.
Configuration API providers system. Before you use OpenAI API, you must agree. So
Okay.
yeah, it's pulling through fine.
It's okay. Good. Okay. So it's an extension. It has there's a component that you can access right here from this page. But you're probably not going to be using the components very much because it essentially shows you some statistics of how many tokens and how many times you've used for AI. You've got here a list of the requests that were made over the time. And you have a little bit of configuration, which basically essentially is just entering and pasting here your secret key that you get from your OpenAI account. So one thing that has to be very clear when you are using these tools from within Joomla or from within any system that's not chatgpt.com is that they are paid for. There's no free version. You start paying and you pay by the what's called the token, which is a little bit like a word. So that's not good news. There's no free tier or anything. You have to pay from the start because it costs so much to be doing that. The good news about that is it's really cheap. Well, you'll see that later. And I made some efforts in the start to be very careful about pricing and how to use the system, only to realize that later on that it was actually really, really cheap. Okay, so essentially you're not going to be using the component. What you're going to be using it is pretty much anywhere else within Joomla. So I'm here on the the list of articles on the Joomla4 website. It works the same on Joomla3 actually. And when 4AI is enabled, you're going to see this little icon here that's available. You can put it anywhere you like. Yeah, it's behind me actually, so I'm going to put it here. And whenever you see that, you can click and it will open. You have a short keyboard shortcut for that. And you got this interface where you find again the 4 areas which I outlined earlier. The chat, let's get the chat out of the way. The chat is here, and that's where you can ask question and get response. How important is a XML sitemap for a website SEO? So you chat like you would with ChatGPT, and you ask your questions, and you have some copy paste button here if you want to really get the answer somewhere else. As you can see here, just a note again, it's not that important. You can see here the number of tokens. Let's say again, it's similar to words. 121 that were used for this conversation, and how much it costs at the current price. So we are in the $0.0000219 dollars for this response. So you have some leg room. You can ask questions. So let's get started about an example. I'm just going to get started by it to create an email. And I have prepared this. And the question I'm asking is, I will be speaking for the Joomla London user group today at 6 p.m. UTC about 4AI, Wibbler's latest AI-powered Joomla assistant. And I want them to write an email, or it could be a newsletter about that. Here you got the estimated token numbers and the number that's remaining. We'll get into the details a bit more later. You have a few settings, but here what you can see and what I've tried to do is that most of it is done through clicking options. You don't have, and here in the topic of the text, the topic of the question, you just talk about your question. You don't have to tell it, I want it to be an HTML email. You don't have to tell it. I want it to be written in a really professional way. I you don't have to tell it which language you want to use, and so on. So the entire idea behind the extension is that you click buttons for the most part, because most people using Joomla websites are not going to be very and won't find very easy putting all these specifications that you need to be able to write content that you can actually use. And there's actually more options below. I'm not going to go through that right now, but you got a lot of options. So let's see what it's saying. And about the time again, so it's about what, 20 seconds something. The time it takes is directly related to how much text it's generating. So let's see what it has given us. Because it's an email, for AI asked ChatGPT to generate both the text of the email and a title, because if you write an email, you need a subject line. So we got that here, and we got some text. So you could see it really improved on my, or expanded to my question. So I have several options here. I can save as a new article, copy to clipboard, and I can then use the response that we have here into on the other tabs. For instance, assuming that maybe I found this is a bit too long, then I'm going to open it in transform. So the content has been moved, the response has been moved to transform. And maybe I can start by check spelling it. No, I'll add that later. I'll show that later. Maybe I can shorten it. So I can say this is a bit too long. So let's make it 40% smaller. One note here, that's one of the limitations of all these systems. They are very bad. They are basically unable to follow your instructions when it comes to how long and how much content you need to generate. So you can't really say, write 200 words about something, because they're never going to follow through on that. They're going to be longer, shorter, whatever. They kind of decide. So the prompts that 4AI sends have been refined so that you get a decent results, but it's never going to be exactly 40% of the initial size of the content. But it still does something, hopefully. And so we got that. You can see it was really, really, it removed most of it. So either you're happy with that, or you can try again, like you modify the request and it's going to be restarting again. Let me get back to the original that I have here, and I'm going to open it in transform again to this time maybe change the style. I want it to be simpler, because I found there's basically two more words. So we have here a list of styles, writing styles that we can use. I'm going to write it ask it to write it in a more simple way. And there I have it. Okay, because it's not always easy to identify what they changed, what happened. I've made a button here that shows the differences. So that helps you see what sort of wording they have removed. Like, we are thrilled to invite you to our upcoming event, has been turned into come join us, and so on. So you're much more better equipped than myself, than me, to analyze that and evaluate that. But I trust he's doing a pretty good job here. So that's the kind of transformation you can do. And if I get back here and go back to the transform to have the original, you can see that you can shorten, expand, you can get a summary of the original text. You can rewrite for keywords. So you can say, for instance, here, this is a good text presenting what we are talking about, but I'm very much into promoting myself, so I wanted to use my name more. So I have this original text it wrote, or any text that you have on your website, and you ask it to rewrite it by incorporating content that you need, keywords, specific keywords that you want to have in this content.
Yannick, we've got a question that's kind of apt for what you're doing at the moment. It's when you're shortening or making the text requests longer, are you paying for each of those?
Of course, absolutely. You pay for each word. You pay for each word that you send to them, and for each word that you get back from them. So each time I click, I don't know, translate to French this text, they will count the length of text that we have here, and that's actually 4AI gives you when you're doing the request, and they will translate it to French. They will sum up these two numbers and multiply by the cost of a token. Just to show you, you've seen we've done a few transformations already. We've sent, you can see the total here of that session. We've sent 4,200 tokens to 4AI, or actually 4,200 is the sum of all the contents that we sent to them and all the replies we got from them. And the cost for that is $7,000. So that's what I was saying. It's you pay for each single word that you send to them and that you receive from them, but the cost is rather low. When I look at estimate cost, it's increasing every time. Yes, that's correct. It's always increasing. Okay, so I just asked it to rewrite for keywords, so I'm going to click and show me the difference. And you see here one example of the thing it does, which means that you have maybe sometimes to refine or be a bit careful with the instructions that you give. So it did what I asked. It put my name in the content. I would think it's a little bit too much this time. And let me modify. So let me modify again the response. So now I have this text that it wrote for me where it rewrote it for keywords. But it's going to be interesting. I can show you. Yeah, something. So let's say it added the keywords that I wanted in my name, but it added too much of it. So I'm going to tell it to change that and only add the keywords twice, because it added it too many times. So I submit the requests. And here we are. It didn't change anything. And what I wanted to illustrate here, so it didn't change anything, meaning in the reply, it didn't take into account my request to add only the system, the word twice. So, but here is an example, and something that was added only recently is that you have a choice of the model, and you can use GPT-4 instead, because GPT-4 is the slower but better model. And when you do that, then in theory, it's better at following your instructions. So if you tell it to to put some keywords only twice, then it's supposed to be doing it better. Maybe it's not going to be adding it only twice, but maybe it's going to be adding only 3 times. We're still in the area where they are not following exactly your instructions. And GPT-4, I think you're going to see that, is quite a bit slower than GPT 3.5 at the moment. I should be at, what, 30 seconds now? So quality has cost. You got 2 costs here. You got the time, it's much longer. Yeah, so it's an interesting example. So you got the time, it's much longer, and you don't see that, but it's much more expensive here. We've moved to using 6 cents of a dollar so far, with nearly 7,000 words. But it did some work, and hopefully it removed some instances of Yannick Gaultier and not added too much of it. My point is that it's actually much better, but much slower and a bit more expensive. And you have to keep in mind all of that is happening pretty much as we speak. 2 months ago, I would have told you there was no GPT-4, and GPT-5, GPT 3.5, GPT-3, the previous model, was at about the same speed as you see GPT-4 today. A couple of months later, GPT 3.5 is really decently fast, and GPT-4 is slow. I'm pretty sure that by the end of the year, we'll have GPT-5, and GPT-4 is going to be fast because they're going to move up the ladder each time. So I got back to the email they created for us, and the last thing I wanted to show to you, I'm going to switch back to GPT 3.5. It's translating because that's a really good application for these systems. I'm going to ask them to translate that to French, of course.
Just out of curiosity, what other choices do you get? Do you get American English and Australian English?
Okay, I'll get to that. I'm going actually to do that later on the front end, and we'll see that. But I can see that you're very concerned with the type of English that is written here, so I'll address that. Anyway, so you can see the translation, and you can see 2 things that Fourier has done for you here is that you asked for translating a text, but because it assumes that you're going to be creating a new article based on that, it also so first translated the text, and then at the same time asked for the AI to write a title for the translated text and write a description for the translated text. That's not a translation of an existing title or translation. It is a new title and a new description written based on the translation. And that's where you can, from here, we could save as a new article. If we click save as a new article, we have a title. We can pick a category. We can select whether we want that to be French or we want to be an all languages item. We have the meta description filled up already, and we can just save that as a new article. So this is done. And when that thing has been saved as an article, you have a pop-up that comes here, and you can edit this article in a new tab. You can see that too. And this is the article that was created. It's unpublished, but then you can fix it or change it or whatever, add images and so on, exactly as you want. Change category. It's just a regular article. So this is essentially how it works, the general background. From there, We can go to things like I can go back to our created content, the original content, and there are a couple of things I wanted to show to you before we go to. I'm not forgetting your question about the language. We can use this content that we have created or another one, and we can do some SEO work on it. And the SEO work, we got essentially three things. We can write title, meta description, and we can extract keywords from it. Page title is super simple. Let's say you have written this content, or you have had this content written. It might be written by the AI, or it can be totally an existing article. We'll see that in a minute. You submit the request and you ask for titles, and 4AI is going to ask the AI system to write a few titles for you, 3 of them, which you can copy to the clipboard and then later use wherever you like. It works the same with the description. I'm not going to do that because you get the picture. You get 3 descriptions, 3 meta descriptions. And again, the prompts that are used by 4AI internally are really meant for SEO. So it didn't ask for a summary. 4AI didn't ask ChatGPT for a summary of the text. It specifically asked for a meta description meant to be used inside a website page, meta description tag. So we really get what we need. An interesting feature here is to extract keywords. And if you ask it to extract keywords from a piece of content, an article or something else, you get this. So it identified the main keywords from your text, and it also found some related keywords that are not present in your text. And it's really interesting, and also a hashtag. It's really interesting because these can give you idea, and you can use them to write more content. And this, of course, can give you ideas to change the content, write more content, more articles on related topics that you can reinforce themselves. You can use these keywords to run ads campaign, or any kind of sort of marketing campaigns. So it's really interesting, and it works. That's one of the very good usage of this tool. Now, obviously, the other things you do when you have written an example, an article or some piece of content, is that you want to share it. So you can open this content into on the social and ads area, and you can ask for AI to write tweets. Yeah, I know I'm supposed to change that to X, but it's not done yet, and I think most of you will agree that we are still more familiar with tweets, so it's still a tweet. And so basically, again, there are several options that you can use to customize a little bit what it's doing, but I won't get into that now. And if you submit the request, then what's going to be doing is write a few tweet suggestions. Here they are. This is a simple thing. This article has no image, so you got well, you got some tweets, and the way it works here is that you have several options. You can, of course, copy the content. You can see that, you can notice that it found also some hashtags for you if you want to use that. And the simplest way to use that is to just click the tweet button, and it opens up a pop-up where you can, I don't know where there are shoes below it, but it prepares the work for you to finalize the tweet and post it directly from here. So it's really handy, especially if you consider that something that I was never able to do by hand. You can also ask it to generate a tweet thread, like a series of tweets about a topic, which are really interesting and attractive for many people. When you have just a little bit longer content than what's normally used on a tweet, and this is how it works. It did some tweets as well, but this time there are a series. So the tweet has been split in 3 parts. We have tweet with the numbering, with the numbering, and they are ready to tweet and copy to have the second and third tweet. So that's really meant to be really easy to use. and very fast once you have worked out your main content. Okay, so I'm going to close this now and maybe do something that's I'm going to do it right here because it's a bit more visible, but it can be done. So I have this very interesting article about bleaching your clothes at home and how safe you can do that, how say you can do that safely, which is something a topic that probably most of you are really interested in. And I'm going to work on that. Just one thing I wanted to mention. We're going to go to the language. I've been speaking here about Joomla articles and Joomla categories. You're not limited to, okay, let me open that. I have this article and I want to work on it. So I still have the 4AI button here and open it. And when I open 4AI on the Joomla page where I have an editor opened, then the content from the editor is going to be automatically picked up here. You can remove it and do something else if you want, but it's really interesting because it's already right there. And what I wanted to mention is that I'm working here with Joomla articles, but it works the same with any editor that you have open. So it would work exactly the same if you are in Virtuemart and you are editing a product description, or in JReviews, or in Hikashop, or in whatever extension you are using, as long as they are using the standard Joomla editors and the standard Joomla API. Before you ask, I can already say that it doesn't work with, sorry, it doesn't work with page builders, such as SP page builders or, sorry, or others. Because they just don't follow the Joomla API, so I can't pick up the content from them. But it will work with any, and will pick up the content of any editor that you have inside of your Joomla website from other extensions as well. So once you've done that, you have opened this, you can, for instance, let's say, try to get a meta description for this very interesting article.
Fred asked, would it work with custom fields?
It will not work. Let me try to check because this came up. So first, as usual with SEO people, it depends. But it should work with custom fields that uses and that have a text editor to enter content. I'm not, what I don't remember is that there's a problem with identifying, like if you're on the Joomla page here, like the Joomla edit page here, you have multiple editors. If I remember correctly, 4AI will only pick up the first editor in the page, which is normally the main article content. So I will say, so far, the safest thing is to assume is that it doesn't work with custom fields. So it doesn't work directly with custom fields, but you're not you're out of options. You can just always, as always, you can just copy and paste. So that works. But obviously, if it works directly with the editor, and especially with articles, it's a bit more convenient because, as we've seen here, we've asked for a description, meta description for this article, and we can just click the replace description button, and it has replaced the description inside here, the field. But if I close that, I will see the description has been filled in here from 4AI. So it's supposed to be really convenient to do tests and then validate and use the content that you have created. I'm going to, because we are here in the using it, I'm going to actually switch to the front end just to show you how it works here. I'm logged into the front end, and I am looking at a default content from the Joomla install. And I have this article, which welcome to your blog in English. And I'm going to edit it normally. And I still, because I've switched to the editor, to the edit page, I have the 4AI icon that's here, which I can call with a Control Shift F4, Control Shift 4, sorry. And here I have the content that's right here, and I can, and I'm getting back to your question about language. So I'm asking it for spelling and grammar, and spelling and grammar is good because it's not just spelling and grammar; it's also about the style and the language here. If I show the differences, it's a small piece of text, so the check was really quick. And here, yeah, it found a little bit. I mean, you tell me. The source text was the administrator logging link is on the very bottom of this page, and it replaced that with is at the very bottom of this page, and it also added a comma here and there. So that looks good to me. I mean, you might.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
You're probably the one doing better, but I think the commas are where they are supposed to be. So let's modify this request again. And here, indeed, you've got two sets of languages. Auto means we are not specifying. For AI is not going to specify any language when talking to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is going to work, it's decide for itself. Then you have here the three languages that are installed on the website, because this is a multilingual website with three languages: English, British English, French from France, and Dutch. So you can force it to use one or the other languages. And then you've got a list of other languages that you can work with. The list of languages that ChatGPT and therefore the OpenAI API can work with is not known. It's not something they have published. We don't know exactly. This list is something that I've gathered from various location sources, and I'm pretty sure, and I'm confident it's going to work fine with this. So I don't think, yeah, we can see what it does if we ask it to translate to US English. Translate maybe a bit harsh.
No,
Yeah.
I'm fully with
So
you on that.
yeah, so the only real difference is the
So,
infamous S versus Z or Z actually. So basically it works. And we're still on the front end, we're still on the editor. So let's say we want to turn that, because we have the American version, we can just either save as a new article or replace the editor content with our changes here. So if I click that and I close this, I should have the Z here. So meaning you can bring back all your content in one go. And the other thing I wanted to show here is that it's about languages actually. But imagine you have written this very interesting article about how do you blog post, how do you blog with Joomla. Then you can tweet about it, and you can tweet, but you can tweet in any language. Like you can write the article in English, but you can now tweet in Dutch about it. And there you go. It didn't work. Okay, bad examples. I'm going to modify the request and see if the higher hand, I tried that before, it worked well. That's the demo syndrome.
and what social medias have you actually integrated? So it goes through their APIs. So
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the point. I didn't, because that would be, yeah, okay. So you can see the difference. The GPT-4 model is a bit smarter, and from the little bit of text that's in this article, it could extract something. I can't comment on what it's saying, but it looks good. And so no, I'm not using their API, because that's a whole it's a whole different thing. If you're using the API to post, well, first, if you tweet, you can't, because the API is paid for now. And then you need to authenticate to the various social networks. So it's much more complex. So for now, I only tweet directly here, because you still have this option of opening a URL and you can tweet from there. And I can I can do the same with Facebook. So I open a pop-up and the Facebook post is there, but that's pretty much it. LinkedIn, there's no direct way to do that. You have to use the API, which again, I don't. So in all these cases where there's no actual button to share content right away, you'll have to copy paste. Let's see if I do a Facebook post, it's a little bit different, but it's about the same. The post is supposed to be longer and the format is going to be different. I would like to insist a little bit again on the fact that what you see here, getting a formatted tweet or a format or something that's ready to copy paste into Facebook or LinkedIn, is not something that you will get easily directly from ChatGPT. This is happening because because 4AI is taking your request, the button you clicked, and putting that together into a rather lengthy prompt instructions for the AI, so that you get something that's properly formatted for use into Facebook or in other social media. And the same applies to if you want to have ChatGPT extract keywords from a piece of content in a given language, or or write a meta description in a given style, you're going to have to work quite a fair bit of prompt to get to that. So anyway, we have our Facebook post that we can copy and put into a post. That's pretty much it for me, I think. Yeah, that's the general idea. What else? I'm going to close this. Two things. There's a free of charge version of 4AI that's a bit limited, of course, and there's a paid for version, a cost of $69 per year for the subscription. And then you need your API key for from OpenAI, which you get by creating an account there to start working with that. So that's pretty much it for me.
Thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. I'm sure there's going to be questions on this, but thanks for that. You're, I think, the first person who's ever done a talk and had to pay for it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, actually. Yeah.
And also interesting seeing the email. I mean, had we had that for the talk tonight, we might have got more people. But I know that Gary puts a lot of effort into making the hilarious mistakes, whereas ChatGPT seems to do it just straight off correctly. So it's not.
Yeah, you still have to,
But
like
yeah,
if you didn't notice, but in the waiting time where I display some messages while you're waiting for the reply from the API, you'll see that I say, well, make sure to double check everything that you got back, and maybe 3 times, because you'll still get some mistake. And I want to insist on that. It's not something that will be perfect. It's something that's very convenient. And if you ask them to write a tweet or something as a blog, even a blog post is already something, some content. You can't expect to get a blog post out of a phrase, or if you get a blog post out, you will get a blog post out of a simple phrase asking for something. But the blog post in question is probably not going to be very, very good, or it may be good, but it may have some mistakes in it. So you do have to double check and triple check everything that comes out of these systems.
Yeah.
It's really important. But there are things I'm having them write all my tweets and all my Facebook posts, which are not that many, and it helps a lot.
Yeah. No. I've got some research I've been doing, which I'm going to have to share in a minute, but on the acceptance of blogs that are written by AI. But are there any questions?
Yeah, because Phil complains so much about my social media, I'm going to get him to buy a license so we can get it done right.
Yeah, now I'm under pressure.
I've got a couple of questions, Yannick. You mentioned earlier on in your talk about you could opt out of being involved in the training for ChatGPT-5. I just
Yes.
wondered what would be the pros and cons of either staying in or coming out.
Yeah. So, so first, the way it's done. So first, there are actually two things here. Some of you may be familiar with the fact that ChatGPT, the paid version of ChatGPT, is able to use plugins. Some of these plugins can actually go and fetch live information from the internet to reply to the question that was posed by the user. So there are two distinct sources of information that ChatGPT may use. The first one is what we're going to call the plugins, and that's live, that's happening now. It's information, they go to your site, somebody asks about the best SEO extensions for Joomla, so they do a search of some kind, and they end up on Weebler.com, and they learn about for SEO, and that's good, and they use that in the reply they are making. But this information is not used to train future model. It's just the current ChatGPT that's trying to use up-to-date information to reply to a question. And then there's the second type of information, which is the information they gather from the internet or from wherever they can to train ChatGPT 5 and ChatGPT 6 and ChatGPT 7. So these are the two things. And you can block ChatGPT robots separately for each use case, and you might want to do different from in each case. For instance, if you let your data, your content be served as a basis to train ChatGPT 5, then there's no way out. It's going to be there. ChatGPT is going to be knowing about your content at the moment, and you can't take it out, and it's going to be available for everyone in the future, everyone using ChatGPT 5. So that's one thing, and maybe you want that because maybe I want that because I want ChatGPT 5 to be aware of for SEO, my SEO extension, so that it can include it into responses it's going to be making to people searching for SEO extensions for Joomla in the future, whenever ChatGPT 5 is released. And likewise, maybe you don't want ChatGPT 5 to be trained and be aware of your content because it's your own content and you don't want it to be shared with others. There's no way, and the only way you can really prevent ChatGPT to use your content is by blocking it now. You can't remove it from ChatGPT 3 and 4 because it's too late. They were trained last year. ChatGPT was trained last year. What it knows, and you can't take anything back and out of it. But you can prevent it from the future. And for the plugins, well, it's about the same thing. Maybe you don't want the plugins to come and fetch the information from you. What you want is people to go to your website. So you can decide to block them.
There's actually an article on the plugins. I was quickly looking at the magazine thinking, why doesn't anyone know about it? Because it was done a month ago, but it wasn't actually published a month ago. So in 3 days' time, there should be an article about plugins in ChatGPT and OpenAI, which I wrote a month ago, about ones that you can use for improving your websites and that. And they are very interesting. And I use the one that searches for ChatGPT, that searches Bing and uses Bing to go and get information. But they've discontinued that and removed it for the time being.
Well, they have this problem throughout the whole thing, is that it's safety.
Yeah.
It's if somebody is asking for something and they give the order or they give information with the effect of a plugin or ChatGPT going to a given website to fetch information, obviously there are some people that are going to send the ChatGPT crawler, the ChatGPT plugin, to websites they should never see or should never know about, and then there's going to be some funky responses in coming from that. So they are very. It's a hard problem, really. It's a hard problem, but
So
yeah, it's something you have to decide for yourself, really. Do you want to be in there, or do you want to be out and still bet on the fact that you're going to be able to bring people back to your website in the future, today and in the future?
It's also interesting because one of the things that I've been watching several blogs of people who do blogging and who teach blogging and getting to the top of Google and Bing. And one of the things that they've been saying is they're not so worried about it because about AI affecting their ranking, because they write very interesting articles and unique articles. And there was a point where Google was filled with the top 10 would be virtually the same, because it's like, hey, there's lots that are very similar, therefore they all must be correct. And it became more sane land, as it were, very samey articles. And now Google's starting to go, well, hang on a minute, that's not necessarily good. We need to show different results that also fit these things. So you can actually do very different blog and still get to the top and not be part of the huge crowd, because AI is actually working out of, this has got merit, this has got tables in that the others don't have, and information that they don't have, but there is a majority that have this information, so we'll put them up there as well. And they've noticed that creeping in, where these different sorts of articles are coming in. So if you put the original research in, now then the question is, do you want that original research to then fall into the hands of AI so that it could then be brought back into, for example, your program and put back into an article and then feed back into Google? And probably the answer is no. So yeah, it's an interesting
You're
one.
just getting distilled versions of great, interesting research, kind of regurgitated again and again, but slightly less interesting.
Yeah.
But let's not forget that content like blogging and text is only a very small fraction of the content of the internet. There are plenty of Joomla websites which are about different things, like obviously e-commerce is a big thing. You want your products to be into to be in there or not. If you have your product, it's a really difficult trade-off. If your products are in, let's say you accept plugins and you make ChatGPT aware of your current products. Sorry, I think I'm. So ChatGPT is aware of your products, and people are not searching through Google; they are searching through ChatGPT, asking, "Okay, what kind of product can I use to do this?" Then yes, you want to make ChatGPT aware of the existence of your product and its specification, because that way it's going to be talking and offering it to people maybe. But then at the same time, you're missing the opportunity, which is to have these people coming back to your site to see your other products, the other things you're offering, which is the main goal, essentially, or a very very big goal for many type of websites. So that's the question everybody has to ask themselves when it comes to blocking these tools. Also, the other thing is, it's only OpenAI, ChatGPT, that allows this kind of blocking. All the others are not. So far, obviously, OpenAI is the biggest one, but so far, it's pretty safe bet to say that there are plenty of startups training some AI models with our websites at this very moment as we speak.
Yeah, I know a few.
So I've got another couple of questions, Yannick, but I just wanted to check the floor and see if anybody else has any questions they want to throw at you. Great. Okay, well, I'll get on with my questions then.
I actually got something to show quickly, which is to do with, so we've been running an experiment on one of my test sites, and I've reported this before. It's been interesting how it's progressing. So during COVID we had, or just after, we had kind of an intern kickstart who was had a master's in English, and I got her to write me a lot of articles because effectively the government was paying, so why not? And I shared her with the local council, and so she had a master's degree in English and in information writing, and we managed to do. And I remember reporting this to you in the Netherlands. On our best day, we managed to do, between the two of us, kicking it backwards and forwards and trying to keep focused, 4 articles, and they were reasonably well received. And we put the images in. My assistant Stacey put the images in, and that was a whole day's work. I've now created some prompts, and there's a whole system that I use to create articles. And when Stacey's got some spare time, Stacey, who doesn't do English and isn't really interested in writing at all, will take a topic, push it to my prompts, and create 10 to 12 articles a day. And all of the images that she adds are not from stock material, but she gets AI to create them. Now, I've got this open quickly. What I wanted to do was show you how they're competing against the real articles. So if I share my screen. Now, I last reset my counter 45 days ago. So if I show you, can you see the page here?
Yep.
Great. So what I've got here is I've got the back end of my Joomla site, about 400 articles over the last 3 to 4 years. I reset the counter 45 days ago, and what we can do is put in, I started doing it with Stacey now if I do April, we have nothing. If I do May, we have here. So look down the side and you can see that one of the articles is actually in the top 10, 15 of my articles already. And then we have to go quite a way, and then we get a load coming in. But these are competing against handwritten articles that were highly curated and lots of sweat and tears put over. And if I go for a month later or earlier, later, then we've got this lot here that come in. So you can see, and then if I go another month, this won't be quite fair because of the reset counter, but you'll see they're mostly at the bottom. And the ones for this month so far are all at the bottom. So you can see how quickly they're working up against ones that have been indexed and are doing pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Google's not actually penalizing the AI ones at all, and they are totally written. I go through and do a bit of grammar checking. I make a few changes, but very few, and to the point where, unless it's really, really bonkers, I leave it purely for the test. And yeah, I've been really annoyed that it's beating some of my best articles.
Yeah.
So
I have I suspect what you're saying is that most of your traffic is coming from Google in that case.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
So
people were worried that AI would be spotted and be penalized, but it's not. No.
AI is not going to be spotted. It's basically impossible. You can't spot AI from bad writing, right?
Yeah.
And
there are AI tools. Yeah. There are AI tools out there which will give confident readings, and I don't do it straight in as a prompt. I have a little several stage thing with the prompt that Stacey just does. She bangs them out really quickly, and it's 5% chance of being AI. I put AI totally generated articles through, and it's come back between 5 and 8% chance of being written by AI. It was fully AI.
It's impossible to detect. I mean, OpenAI themselves, they worked for a few, like a year or so. They worked on a AI detection tool, and they, 3 months ago, they cancel it. It doesn't work. They can't. Even them can't, and that's normal because it's just text. It's coming from the internet. It's the statistical continuation of existing content on the internet. So the question is not really whether it's been written by AI or not. It's really about the content itself.
Yeah.
What's for instance, I would argue that maybe it's a bit easier for AI tools to write about content, about topics, if you will, where they have ample resources already. So if you have a lot of topics, if you have a lot of, if they know, if they've been trained on a lot of content that's about the topic you are talking about, they are probably going to be doing a very good job. But, and that's my own experience, if you ask ChatGPT very specific questions about Joomla SEO, for instance, a topic I know pretty well, then you get really, really odd responses sometimes. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's really, really bad. And I believe that's because they don't have enough training, or the training they have is not of high quality. I mean, even if you don't just ask about SEO, you get really average responses sometimes.
Very interesting, because a friend of mine, Dr. Bedford, was doing a talk or a presentation on for English Heritage on a very specific topic, and I said, "Oh, let's just," and she was mulling over it. I said, "Oh, let's just see what ChatGPT has to say." So we put in her talk title, and it wrote a really good article about lead miters and the lead miter and its use and all that. Totally misunderstanding that a lead miter isn't made of lead.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, if I showed it to someone, and to me, it looked really good, but she just laughed and laughed because it was absolutely totally wrong. Because
Yep.
it put the, you know, an elephant is pink, I'm pink, therefore I'm an elephant. It was that sort of logic that it used. So, and that's exactly it, because I knew from her comments that there was virtually no information out on the internet about it.
It's
So it just,
important to, yeah, it's important to remember that these tools at this moment are just large language models. The only thing they do is based on existing content, billions. I mean, it's like, yeah, ChatGPT 4 is like trillions of tokens, trillions of words. They predict what the next word is most likely to be, just one word at a time. And so that should be, that should always put really stupid and random words. But actually, if and they don't really know why, but if the number of training words is big enough, it makes sense. What they, most of the time, what they output. But the thing is, even if they don't know about something, there will always be a more probable words that comes after your question, because they somewhere there's, even if the probability is low, there's always a word that comes after your question, and so they will always reply. They have put safeguards now so that you can see sometimes, you know, I'm just an AI model, so I can't reply to that and so on. But generally speaking, on typical topics, they will always reply, even if they don't have no idea what. I mean, they can't even have an idea, because it's just, again, it's just a statistical probability of what is the word that follows, how to create an XML sitemap for a Joomla website. That's the next word is, and so on, so on, so on. If they have more data, maybe the result is going to be better. If they have less data or poor quality data, then the output is probably going to be less than stellar, I think.
But over the last 3 months, I mean, I can tell if it's ChatGPT 3.5 or 4 that's writing an article, when occasionally I've not, or Stacey has not clicked on 4, because we always use 4. Then I've read it and gone, hang on a minute, did you use 3? And we look back and it's like, yes, it is 3, because it's just not as good. It doesn't flow as well. And you're totally right, it's much slower, but I've seen it improve. And Stacey was noticing that with the AI images that she was doing at the beginning, she had to regenerate, and then pick 1 or 2 that were okay. Now it gets them first lot, you first 4 presented, there's always a good one, and some of them are just stunning, where they're topics that we could never have got an image, and yet we've given it this kind of sentence to go and find, and it's come back with an amazing image, which sums it up totally. Not always, but sometimes you just have to look at it and go, that is a beautiful image. And no photographer could have taken that because they're not on Mars at the moment. But, you know, it is amazing how it kind of works these things out. So, and we were chatting about the other day, we've noticed the improvement in the last 3 months with the image generation.
Yeah. And there will be more changes. It's all of this is a work in progress, really, but it's already usable. I mean, it's already perfectly usable and will, I
And the
believe,
paper
help
version, I don't
quite a few people already, and especially in our fields,
Yeah.
it's really usable.
And ChatGPT 4, it was a limit of 24 articles every 3 hours, and they recently questions, and they recently upped that to 50. So you know, they're already doubling the amount you can do.
Well, when you're using the API, like if you're using it through 4AI, there's no limit. It's I mean,
Yes,
the limit is the price you pay. Like if you're using ChatGPT, it's a flat fee. It's $20 a month because ChatGPT 4 is only available to paid for.
Yes, and that's the point. When
users.
I started using it, it was $20 for 24 every 3 hours, and now it's $20 for 50
exactly.
every 3 hours.
If you use it through the API, that is through a tool such as 4AI, then it's not limited. You can use it for each and every request if you want. But it's I don't remember the price. I don't remember the price, but it's roughly 10 times.
$20 a month, I think.
No, yeah, but that's the API is not a flat fee. The $20 a month is when you go to the ChatGPT website and you chat with ChatGPT. But if you're using 4AI, you need an API key, and 4AI is making requests to the API to ChatGPT servers on your behalf.
Yeah, but the $20 a month gives you an API key.
No, that's different. You don't need to pay $20 a month to get an API key. The API key is free. You don't. I have one. I don't have a paid for ChatGPT. The API key is just the identifier. It's associate your credit card with you, and that's it. So you don't need to have a paid subscription with ChatGPT to use their API. You just need a key, and if you have a free of charge ChatGPT account, you just go to the settings and you get as many API keys as you want. But if you want to use them, you need to put a credit card in. You don't need to pay the $20. You just need to put a credit card in, and every time you make 4AI is making a request on your behalf to ChatGPT servers, to OpenAI for clarity, then you pay some cents or some, the pricing API pricing. Yeah, GPT-4, for instance, you pay 3 cents for 1,000 tokens of input and 6 cents of a dollar for 1,000 tokens. And GPT-4, you pay 5 times less, about 5 times less for the input and 1/3 for the output.
This is quite a price difference.
Have you heard of local GPT?
Sorry?
Have you heard of local GPT? It's a project.
There are many. These are the open source ones usually, and they are I mentioned them earlier in the slides. I have been using. There's one software called GPT4All.
GPT4All,
that's something you install on your machine, and it downloads these various software for you, and it makes it easy to test them.
Yeah.
My experience has been that it's not quite there yet, and I mean, maybe I was not fair, but what I've been doing is I've been taking the prompts that 4AI was building, so that like real life prompt, and putting them into GPT-4 running essentially with the Llama
2,
not Llama 2. I haven't tried Llama 2, and because Llama 2 is like 70 billion. Well, there's a smaller version.
Yeah.
but you need a gigantic graphic cards with a lot of memory to run the real Llama 2. So it's not possible. I don't have that. So
No, the local GPT one is quite good, but it's I think it's like a 7 gigabit download,
yeah,
and you know it's 2 years old, or the data it's got is 2 years old.
if you the Mosaic one, the Mosaic ML is also a 7 billion parameters one, and it's really good, but they're not there.
Not
Sorry.
there.
I mean, I tested with real life examples because I record the prompts that 4AI is doing, so I have hundreds of them.
Yeah.
And it's not there. It's the answers are not there yet.
So
there's an issue with the amount of resources. That there are two issues.
They're
with
also
them.
very hard to set up, aren't they? They're quite tricky to get running.
I don't know, GPT-4 for me, it was really easy. I install and then I click a button to download and it was working. But the problem they have is that the way training these models requires millions of dollars. So these guys, they have not done that. They don't have the dozens or hundreds of millions of dollars that are required to actually train a large language models. So what they are doing is instead, they are training these smaller models on sets of questions and replies they got from ChatGPT. It's really funny if you think about it.
Yeah.
So they have used people and software to ask questions to ChatGPT, and they have sets like 50,000 or 100,000 questions and replies from ChatGPT. And they feed that into their model. So it's really funny. It's like really meta kind of thing, and they and so so it works. You start to get good results with that, decent results. But there's a problem is that the data itself, and then they apply techniques to compress the information at the cost of a little bit of precision loss, but it's compressed. And so, but the problem is more the input data. The input data is the output of larger language models, and there's a big question about the limits of that approach. What sort of quality you can end up with? It's again, it's ongoing. It's something that's
ever moving.
It's happening. We don't know exactly where they go, but in my experience, they're not used. I can't use them today to do the kind of thing that I've shown you tonight. Really, it's not usable yet.
And you've been Yannick. I've noticed you've adapted your program already, because when you were doing your talk in the Netherlands, you weren't able to use 4. You were using 3.5 because the API wasn't there. So they've marched that on. I also noticed that you're now doing keywords, and I believe when we were in the Netherlands, you didn't have keywords coming into your.
I think I had keywords. Yeah. What I may not have had in the Netherlands is the chat. I think I added the chat afterwards.
Okay.
From requests, and also when I realized that in ChatGPT, your input, what the question you ask and the reply they get, well, actually the question you ask and the data you provide is used to train the next versions, ChatGPT 4, 5.
Yeah.
And at some point this year, they allow you to disable that. So you can say, I don't want my data, the data that I feed you, the content I give you, I don't want that to be used by you to train your models. But if you do that, if you click that button, then you also lose the history, the chat history that you have on the left.
Yeah.
The two are tied. So I find that a pain. And so that's when I added the chat to 4AI, because it's also convenient to have that right there.
Yeah.
On occasions.
So my final question, obviously the way to get the best out of any AI model or chat GPT interface is obviously with the prompts that you use, and I can see that's the real power behind 4AI, in that you've done an awful lot of work in kind of presenting the information in some way. Times it looked like you were actually sending 3 different questions separately to AI to get 3 different bits of information back and packaging that up, and then the other power of your tool is how you interface it with Joomla so that it's kind of a seamless integration between the two in the back end. My question is, do you open up the facility to modify those prompts slightly if you wanted to kind of tweak your style a little bit? Let's say you wanted not just to write an email, but you wanted to write a jokey email or a grumpy email. Is that something that you're allowed to do?
Yeah, of course. It's. I mean, you would need. Let me. That's the one. This button. No, that's not the right button. I'm not editing. Yeah, all these like, I present it in the simplest way, but all of these options and all these tasks, you can always have 2 things actually, which I didn't explain that, but at least you have more options very often, but at least you have these. You have the main topic field and you got custom writing instructions. The main topic field is something where you can say things like, the question I asked it in the context of being an SEO consultant, and what I'm interested in is SEO results, and I'm a really technical person, and that sort of thing, because this will influence what the AI is going to reply. And the second input field here is custom writing instructions, and that's where you can say, don't use the letter E in your reply or whatever.
And will this override your custom prompts? Like if you're saying I'm a professional SEO consultant, if I say ignore the fact that you're an SEO consultant and tell me you're a comedian.
No, it won't. So okay. It depends on what you mean by override. What you're writing here will be sent along the normal prompts that 4AI would have written.
Yeah. So
it's added in a suitable just before the end. It's added inside of the prompt.
Okay.
And then what ChatGPT, the OpenAI API, is going to do with what you write, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And supposedly, yes, you can do that.
Okay.
But I mean, the context here is not an open, like open to the public. It's something that you're using for yourself. So if you want to spend time overriding these prompts and changing them, be my guest. It's really up to you. But the point here is more to give custom instructions to get a better result. Like when I said, you've put too many, you added the keywords that I wanted into that text. That's good, but you added too many. You added too many times. So sometimes you need to refine. My experience and my bet here is that for most people, and especially people less experienced with dealing with ChatGPT and prompts like that, is that most of the time they can do most of their work with clicking buttons, like these small things. This write a Facebook post. Do you want it to end with a question? Because ending with the question is something that you often do when posting on social networks, because it's supposed to increase a little bit engagement and that sort of thing. So right here, it's just a matter of clicking a button.
Yeah, no, you've taken away a lot of the hard work with AI.
That's what, So there's a big focus on making it usable for people who maybe are less experienced and maybe less interested into actually dealing with that sort of with prompts and prompt engineering and all of that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, one final question. It's my favorite topic of all time. Does it integrate with workflow?
Oh, you mean
Joomla workflow.
You mean the Joomla workflow?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Actually, what's
I can't think of a use case off the top of my head, but I always ask everybody if their stuff works with Joomla workflow.
It doesn't work against.
It seems like the kind of product that could actually benefit from being integrated in Joomla workflow. I know you've got the little button there that would be available should you go into workflow or try and configure some things in there, but I just wondered whether it was something workflow could do as a result of a text that got saved, then got pushed into, pushed into 4AI, output sent to another article or sent to something else. Don't know.
The only thing I can see is to be able to switch it off if you didn't want someone to have the access to it, and switch it on for other people in the workflow. So, for example, if I had two members of staff, one was doing articles with this, and another was doing the images, I would have the workflow, which I do actually have at the moment for some of my sites, where someone's doing the work, and then it goes to the image, and then it goes to the social media people.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's kind of circumvented because you can do it all virtual apart from the image in this.
Yeah.
And that would be a good question. Have you got anything planned for images?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. I just wanted to mention, I mean, it's not really sophisticated, but there is a separate permission, Joomla regular ACL permission that you can assign, so you can decide which user groups and which users are allowed to use 4AI in general, and there's a separate permission for the front end and the back end, and you can disable the front end access as well. So about images, that's an interesting thing. Right after the Netherlands, it was pretty much the first thing on my list to add to. So I spent some time working on it, and my experience was not really good in that. So it really gets down to the details, but the only API that's really usable is the 4AI one. Sorry, the OpenAI one. So it's DALI. DALI has a restriction, which is that it can only produce square images. And so that's kind of a problem. I tried to work around that, give instructions and so on, but it actually can only just produce square images, which are not really well suited to blog post illustrations and many things. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that the quality of the images, like how they would relate to the prompts I was able to create semi automatically, was not really good. And my conclusion was that it was already requiring a lot of work just to get some images in, compared to the kind of images I was getting. I didn't think it was worth it, so I put that on the side for now. I have looked at using the stable diffusion API instead, or in parallel. And again, it's a little bit better because you can specify image sizes, so that's good. It's a bit more complex, and if I remember properly, the API is like totally recent. It's only a few weeks old. The price is a bit expensive as well, so that's still ongoing. My concern is that it's a little bit like creating content and creating text, is that I'm not confident, or I think the quality of images that we are going to get out of these tools right now, within the context of 4AI, is not going to be interesting for many people. Like, I understand what you're saying, Philip. If you train yourself, you write the prompts, and you train yourself for weeks and months, then you can start getting good images. But that's not the context of 4AI. The goal with 4AI is to let people that are less experienced and less interested in these sort of things still use AI and AI APIs to create content and transform content. And my feeling at the moment is that I'm not able to do that with images. I'm happy with what I can do with text and content, but at this moment I've not been able to
I totally agree with you.
proper with images.
No, I totally agree with you. My blog is naturally relaxing, and it's a total smorgasbord of whatever, and it's purely a test site. Doesn't matter, and it's the images that I have to say nah the most, because it's very so one article was on recognizing distinguishing different types of plants, and one of my previous lives, as Gary would say, I was used to work in the largest garden centre in the country at one point, And so I'm really good at identifying plants, and I couldn't identify this because it was totally made up. So in the context of the article, it didn't make any sense. And one the other day was the Great Barrier Reef, and it decided to join the Great Barrier Reef to what looked like part of England. You can't have an article on the Great Barrier Reef when the image isn't the Great Barrier Reef. So when it's very specific, it's rubbish. But when you have a sandy desert with a waterfall, it's great. You know, it doesn't have to exist. Or a mountain on Mars. You know, you can imagine it. It's fine. So when it's real things, it's not so good. You know, it's easier for me to go and pick from a library or go and take a picture of Big Ben than ask it to make a picture of Big Ben.
That's
Give it
in the end, at the end of the day, this was my conclusion. For many use cases, it's so much faster and easier to just go to Pixel or whatever, you know, and just search for a stock image, or maybe don't put an image, because most of the stock image, you know, they do a disservice to your content. So anyway, it depends on what you're talking about and what you're writing about. You know, just imagine that you're writing an article on the Joomla magazine about workflows. What kind of image are you going to put there? Right? So sometimes no image is fine, and sometimes, and again, that's my feeling at this point with what 4AI is meant for. It's I'm not able to extract or create good images for, in most cases. I believe in most cases it's more efficient to go and search for a stock image or another type of image, another source of images.
Well, again, it's part of our test is that we're putting some of our created article images on articles that were already very similar articles to ones that we'd already got out there, and just running them against them to see if there is any detriment to having a stock image. Because the great thing about all of our images is when we put it into TinEye or anything like that, it comes up with 0 other ones out on the internet. Although, interestingly, that's not the case now, because some of our images have been stolen where we've created them and they were totally new, and already in the last 3 months, 1 or 2 of them are now coming back with, no, we found others and they're on other sites, and it's just where they've literally lifted them off our site.
Yeah. Imagine when, in a few months, when millions of people would have created these images everywhere. You know, it's yeah.
At least with the origin.
We're not there yet. Yeah, we're not there yet. It's so anyway. Yeah, one thing, for instance, also, which is less glamorous maybe because it's less linked to content, but one thing I'm researching now is how I could offer linking suggestions inside the website. Now it's somewhat related to the keywords, but if I could extract keywords for various types of content for various articles on the site, then I could offer suggestions when you're writing a new piece of content. I could offer you suggestions as to which article on your site that are similar or related. You could do link to.
Well, that came out of our conversation, because if you remember, when I said about the keywords, and you weren't saying, well, they're not used much, but I said I use them for linking articles.
Yeah.
I put them into the module and put the module at the bottom, and these 5 articles you might also be interested. And so that is actually, if you could do that internally, if you could say, highlight a word and say, is there any other article that would link to this? That would be amazing, because that would be even better.
That's also very difficult, because right now 4AI is working you know, like one article at a time, if you will. It's working on the current page, but it has no knowledge of the actual website content. And to be able to do that, I would have to crawl, to analyze all the pages on the sites and know their keyword, extract keywords from all of them and store that somewhere.
But don't you already have that in the database if you've been storing the keywords? So would you not need to just run against all of the keywords in the articles parameter?
Yeah, if the keywords are there, yeah, it's going to work, and it needs to be updated and so on. So it's not that simple to keep up to date. But it's always possible if you have the keywords. But the point is, in my use case, it's not going to be people are not going to be putting keywords there. So it has to be a bit more generic than that. But so anyway, there are things to do and things to improve.